Come on over. I'm J.C. Shandor, a filmmaker, but also one of the, a small part of this undertaking. I got to be an executive producer on this movie and got shown the film. I think we were just going over it about a little under 2 years ago was the first time I got to see the rough cut of what you guys just saw, just so alive and so unbelievable, and I just dropped to the floor and said, whatever you need at any point in the next couple of years, you know, we'd love to help, and it's been so amazing to watch everything that you guys did just get sort of tighter and tighter and tighter, and it's I don't know how you all feel, but it was an unbelievable achievement, I think. And so you guys probably know these two right here because you just saw a lot of them, but this is Alejandro, if you guys have not met him before, but he's the co-writer and the director of this, and I think we should give him a round of applause. So we're definitely going to open it up for you guys to ask some questions. So I'll just ask a couple that I was walking over here trying to think about what I want to know about it. I've probably seen the film 6 or 7 times in this version, and it's just like new stuff every time. But I think, Alejandro, one of the things I sort of know a little bit about, but I know everyone would probably be pretty interesting, is what was the first image or idea or a person or a news article, or going all the way back, I don't even know how many years ago that was, probably a long time ago, but where was the first idea that just somehow showed up and became this? What was that first thing?
So I was actually shooting my my first fiction film. This is my second. And that one is about a man in a wheelchair who hijacks a plane by hiding 2 grenades in his diaper. And
obviously.
Yeah. And in the end, after this big casting process, I ended up having the guy himself play himself in the film. But he was under house arrest and he was about to be given parole, so I went to the Ministry of Defense that was giving him his parole, so I could shoot the exterior scenes with this man. And when I went, the place was packed with kids. Just kids that, you know, it looked like a schoolyard. They were all like 13, 14, 15. I didn't know why the whole place, like a sort of Justice Department building, was full of kids. And I asked, and they're like, these are all kids that used to be in paramilitary or guerrilla groups, fighting for the right wing or the left wing in Colombia. And now they've actually laid down their weapons, and they're trying to get back into society. And that night they were having a theater program, which was part of the rehabilitation. Wow. And that night I went to that, you know, theatrical workshop, and I watched them, and it was quite an experience, and it really stayed with me. And it made me think, of course, of things that I read when I was their age, like Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and I thought of Lord of the Flies, and I was thinking of, I guess, 2 things. One was Colombia, civil war, the country I'm from, a civil war that's been going on for 60 years and is now living a very fragile peace agreement. And my father's father, my grandfather fought, he's an American, and he fought in World War II, landed in Normandy. And that war has all these like epic front lines and a notion of where you stand and flags, and it's kind of more moral clarity. But war today is more similar like Colombia. So many factions, covert operations, wars fought in the shadows, no clear beginning or end, sometimes no flags, and so I thought there was something new to be said to juxtapose these 2 conflicts, right? The exterior conflict, the conflict we know is war, then the interior conflict that we all live in adolescence, where you want to belong but you want to be alone, your body changes, hormones are raging, you know, hair's coming out in different places, you're neither a child or an adult, and so you had these 2 mirrors, and that's where I felt like there's something to be said here.
What was the writing that you guys all received? I mean, I sort of do know the answer to this one, but what was the process before you actually showed it to like actors? Is that imagery and some of those like images that, you know, I can't get out of my head. Do you see that when you're writing those things? Do you write to images, or do you kind of underwrite the words and then the images are something that are sort of the core of it, or is it, or are those scenes, do they start as a vision in a way?
Yeah, they really do. They start as a vision. I try to write very technical screenplays, particularly towards the end. And in a film like this, I mean, it's a film with all these no's, right? Animals, special effects, digital effects, Hollywood actors, non-actors, underage kids, helicopters, underwater. So I knew that, we had a shoestring budget, so I knew that it was going to be so tense that the DP and I really created a very strong shot list and tried to envision the whole thing. But it was so intense out there, and there were so many unknown variables that I think the idea wasn't just to execute a screenplay, but to try to find what went beyond the screenplay, what was there to really discover, but respecting this visual choreography.
Right. You can tell. I mean, things like that don't just sort of, I mean, they do just happen sometimes, but they take that kind of planning. So when you guys read that, what came to you guys? What did that? Was it an instant yes, or was it one of those scripts that sort of felt like there were more questions than there were answers when do you guys remember when you first read it?
Well, for the agent, it was an instant no, right?
Is that right? Did your agent
Yes.
say no?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't help pretty much the entire process. I'm sorry if they ever see this. But basically not until Sundance premiere did they, come up to me and wide-eyed and not really know what to say, basically saying like, wow, I can't believe you ended up finishing it. And they were right. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but on the page, it was there. I knew what I signed up for, and yes, there were surprises, but like getting thrown into a rapid and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, I was there for whatever Alejandro had in mind, and sort of what I did would inspire the rest of the kids to feel like they could do themselves. And I think
Were you the only trained? I mean, you've had a long career. So, but everyone, how much acting experience was the rest of that gang? Not much, right?
Some had never been before a camera in their life, and some had done a little bit of school plays and things like that.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Was that how was that for you? That must have been kind of intense.
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant, honestly, because these kids were just really being themselves, and I think that I learned a lot from that. Being that, I, Colombian parents, but never had the experience of school and defending myself and bullies and shit in Spanish. So, to be the leader, to be the person that is causing all this. Alejandro kept a lot of the scenes rolling after what was on the page was finished, and you couldn't just retreat into, myself. It had to really continue. So I had to really just start communicating with everybody from day one, which is what happened. Alejandro put us in the same house. We showered together. We waited for the girls to finish. All right, bet you guys are done. It's time for us. It's kind of like true manada, a true squadron of illegal clandestine army.
Your performance, Julianne, it's like it can't all be acting. I mean, maybe you're that good, but can you just talk about the journey? I know some of these stories, but talk a little bit about that third act where you guys were all living in tents by that point, basically, right? In the jungle setting. I mean, just talk us through your journey making this thing.
Yeah. For me, reading it, it was, in my mind, an immediate yes. It was on the page. It was beautiful. It was wild. It was unlike anything I had ever read before, and that, to me, was very exciting. And then I watched Porfirio, and I thought it was a beautiful original film, and I thought, how amazing to get to go to another place and make a film in another language and experience something completely different. It's what I always wish I could do. And the practicals of this were insane and life-changing. And filming up in the mountains was crazy. We were 13,000 feet up, so like very little oxygen. People were having seizures, being taken out in ambulances, and then that was sort of the easy place. And then we went to the jungle where we were living in tents, where the two rivers meet. There's a body of land, and that's where we lived, and that's where we filmed. I was there for 3 weeks. So it was grueling, but it was also magical to have that quality of time and to not be allowed to all go to your own separate hotel rooms at the end of the day. Just inform those relationships and your feeling of isolation and danger and loneliness, and it informs everything. So we were very lucky to have those otherworldly, dangerous, wild locations.
And thankfully no one was
hurt too badly.
This was not a union production. Let's open it up to you guys. I hope someone, actually before we go, I have to ask the question because it's the one thing that just revolutionized, it brought the movie from a 10 to a 15, which is the music. Can you just talk a little bit about your sound design and music experience?
Yeah, I had the really good fortune of working with two amazingly talented women. One is the British composer Mika Levy, and she came on with an unfinished cut of the film, really connected with the spirit, and knew that I was very sensitive about the use of music in film, and we limited it to only 22 minutes, actually. But it really has that kind of minimal monumentalism that the whole film has, and so it started off with that very shrill whistle of the doo, 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 doo.
When was the first time you heard that noise? Because I remember seeing this with the temp music, and then when that whistle kicked in, it was like, whoa.
Well, that was the first thing Mika sent over, and that was one route, and then she sent a B route, and I was clear because we had talked about the temporal feel of the film, right? I wanted to give it a lot of specificity, intimacy, but the film, the characters don't have first or last names. You don't know if you're in the past or in the present. You don't know if the squad is fighting for the left or the right. You don't know if you're in paradise or hell. So it's like it rejects any kind of binary notion of the world. So she has very elemental sounds like that whistle, which is basically blowing into a bottle in her apartment. And then we have a classic string quartetto, and then we have sounds that like are an injection of adrenaline that comes straight out of a synthesizer. So that was really interesting. And also we took a page from Peter and the Wolf where some characters have musical notes, and that worked wonders. And then working in the same room while we were finishing the music with a sound designer, a Cuban woman called Lena Eskenazi, who I worked with on my previous film. And she took a lot of real sounds from different jungles in the world, different mountains, and we created kind of these unique soundscapes that kind of push the natural world to the fantastical. And that was really, and going from objective sound to subjective sound, and we were all locked up in like a soundstage in Buenos Aires in Argentina for about 7.5 weeks, and another kidnapping in there in that dark room. I mean, we didn't leave till we got it.
Yeah, the movie that came out of, which is what you guys just saw, but it was sound sometimes can do that in music, and it was just an amazing heightening of the whole thing. Who's got a hand up right here?
Hi, first of all, thank you for the film. I think it's quite a masterpiece. I've barely seen anything equal to this, and like you guys your performances are amazing, the music is amazing, it seems like everything just nails it perfectly. I'm very interested, as a director, how did you feel directing this whole thing? Like, how was being for you in the jungle? Like, how was putting everybody into such a risky project, like having actors come to the jungle and have them like fly down a river? How did you manage like keeping everybody up in that sense? Like, how did you manage to have to direct everybody in a healthy way and like have a good teamwork and manage to make this in the end?
May not have always been a healthy. Sometimes you got.
I think. Listen, I gave it all I had from the outset. I really took myself to the limit, But then it really depends on the team. I had an amazing group of people with me, and that feeling that we were making something that it's not like whether you like it or not. It's something that, regardless of taste, you feel it visceral. You feel it in the pit of your stomach. It's a film you feel with your skin instead of necessarily only with your mind. And I feel like everyone understood that. And the kids, these young people that came from all different places in Colombia, and they didn't let go. I mean, they, instead of, at first we were like, oh, we need a babysitter, and we need a psychologist, and we need a teacher, and all of this, and treating them with white gloves. But then they were like, no, put me in, coach. They were like, and again and again and again, and they wanted more, and they grew out of that sense of responsibility, and we just had to follow that spirit that you described as a squad, right? Just follow them, and I think we all gave everything we had, and then there's an element of the stars aligning and things happening, and that's why I think it's a film that appeals to your conscious, but also in a way to your subconscious. And I at least that's my aspiration. And I feel very fortunate to make this movie because I think you only make one of these in particular.
Can you guys all talk about the guy that I know a little bit about it, but the gentleman who played your leader? I mean, that casting, and then what it was like to have him. I know his biography, but give us a little rundown on the gentleman that played the instructor.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a bit what are the foundations of the film, and bear with me, but I think this is kind of where we really found it, and that's before shooting the first frame. We looked at kids all over Colombia, 800 kids, different ways, videos, visiting school, looking people on the street while we were location scouting, and narrowed that down to about 20 to 25, let's say, finalists, if you will, and brought them to the sort of boot camp scenario. And in the morning, they did improv and acting exercises, and in the afternoon, we wanted them to do military drills. But it couldn't be like the regular boot stomping you see in something in Full Metal Jacket, because the idea is that this is a clandestine army, right? And so I found this guy who was in a reinsertion program from the government of guerrilla or paramilitary fighters that had let down their arms and were now trying to come back into society. And it was this guy that he went in when he was 11 years old into the guerrilla and rose to be this incredibly prominent fighter that was kind of the Navy SEALs of the guerrilla, if you will. And the guy had like shots in his biceps, and it was really remarkable. And I hired him as a consultant to just teach them to move barefoot, to carry weapons, to line up. And the guy was so incredibly convincing that I was like, you have to come on the other side of the camera. And that's the character of the messenger. The messenger's name is Wilson Salazar, and he's the real thing. And this is a guy who told us while we were shooting, he's like, you know, I was a virtuoso in making war. I was so good at it, these powers of destruction that I learned, and now to use everything I learned to create, I could never believe that I had this possibility. So the guy's like, he like incarnates the possibility of peace, and it was really exciting to have him. And he came with us to the Berlin Film Festival.
Yeah, he's an amazing. I mean, I've gotten to meet him. He's an amazing.
Yeah, you met him at the Colombian premiere.
Yeah. What was it like working with him? I mean, it's magic what's going on between all you guys, but the physicality, and then obviously knowing who he was. Sort of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely made it real. It made it scary in a sense, for sure.
He woke them up every single day.
4 a.m. It was a tragedy. It was terrible. At 4 a.m. was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Yeah, at a certain point, all of our bags were, what's that called? You know.
Well, you had all these cool adolescents, then this small man showed up, and they were like, oh, what's up, whatever. They were poking fun of him. And next thing you knew, he had them all marching.
100%. 100%, yeah.
Wow.
There's echoes of, like, for instance, Apocalypse Now. What would you say are your cinematic influences for this film?
Well, it was my first desire to kind of flirt with genre. So of course I looked at, there's very iconic filmmaking, so everything from like Cleo Denis' Beau Travail, you have Come and See, the Russian film, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, these type of films. We also looked at even Harmony Korine's Glue for all the freshness of like the teenagers. We looked at war photography, Robert Capa, Bill Henson. We looked at Nan Golden's photography for all that exposed skin. Just different things, but the idea of course was to I mean, you can't, when you're trying to make a war film, even if it's a very abstract one, you can kind of negate what's being done. So the idea was even to take those references that have become almost pop culture, like the pig on the stick, right? That it's on the cover, you know, it's a sign reading for any 8th grader in this country. But here it's actually born out of reality that whenever a guerrilla leader in Colombia starts arriving at a certain level, if he can have a pigsty of pigs instead of eating rations in his camp, he's built his own organization. And that was the idea of behind Bigfoot. But yeah, the idea was trying to add something and recognize what already exists.
I think we have time for one more. What about way in the back there? Sorry. On the left side, with his hand up there.
How many shoot days did you have, and how long did it take to finance the project?
Kind of feel we're still financing the project.
Yes, exactly.
Every ticket counts.
Yeah, get your friends to come out.
Listen, I mean, we went to shoot this. We didn't have half the budget. It was really a process that, as JC pointed out, he got involved because he saw a rough finished cut. He saw potential, and his production company came in with a rough cut. Mika Levy came in with another Scandinavian film came in for the digital effects. I mean, that's how this film was made.
If
Really,
there are filmmakers in the crowd looking through the credits of this film and actually realizing that it's a global production, I mean, how many countries
there's money from 9 countries.
Yeah, so I mean, the challenge of making a film like this takes unbelievable. Your producing partner is not here, who is a master at playing all these international funds, and you know the film is so challenging, but it's a really fascinating case study for trying to put together a movie like this.
Don't try that at home.
Yeah, exactly. But like your DP, I mean, just tell that part of it, and amazing things can come out of that sometimes. Like I think you needed to bring a Scandinavian DP, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I shot my first fiction film with the Greek DP Themios Bakatakis, who shot The Lobster and Dogtooth, and he's great. We had a great collaboration. And in this film, I was possibly considering someone else, but when we got big support from the Dutch Film Fund, but part of that was considering a Dutch DP. It wasn't forced upon me at that moment, but they said, here are some options. And then this is Jasper Wolf's pretty much his first film outside of the Netherlands, and he was an amazing, amazing partner. And I mean, a lot of people got taken out in stretchers, including me, but he didn't. he was solid, yeah.
Well,
and it took 9 weeks of shooting, and as I mentioned, 5 weeks of pre-production. But we were working 6-day weeks, and I was working 7 or something.
In the post-production, just for another lesson of this film, so, I mean, there was a version of this that almost could have, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film, but almost a year earlier, potentially could have been released, and but that work that's happened in that year, it's a lesson for filmmakers, just the editing process and music and the care that you guys put in, just continuing to put in, brought the film to just
yeah, as a final note, something that's really, I mean, just for you filmmakers out there, that was interesting was, you know, what you see up there, it's 13,000 feet up in the air. It's a place called Paramo, and it's a highland, but it's a wetland as well, and it holds it's a reservoir of the country's water, and that water kind of trickles down the mountain, gaining more speed until it ends up with the torrents in the lowland, in the jungle. Of course, it loses its clarity, you know, as it goes down. So we had that idea that the film had to feel like water running into a river, and that you wouldn't watch that river from a bank, but you would be thrown inside of it. And that was something that it was kind of, it sounds nice, but to make it work in the edit, as JC said, we were there for a year. We had a good film, I think, that was accepted through all these kind of major film festivals, but we just kept working and working and working to try to give you that feel where you're on the river.
Well, the performances, I think, as a director, all you can hope for is sort of creating a playground where you let these unbelievable talented people come together, and hopefully you capture sort of magic. And I just want to say, you guys and all of your other sisters and brothers in this thing, you know, you were given this amazing playground and this opportunity to do this, but it was an absolute joy to watch these performances come together, and I think congratulations to all of you guys. It's an amazing achievement, so congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you all for coming out, and seriously, get your friends to come out to the movie. It's all over New York. It's in a couple of theaters, so please spread the word.